Sup nerds! Today did receive something in the mail. As you guys know from my previous handheld videos, my emulation handhelds, even though I love them, they were mostly outdated. They couldn't even run PS1 very well. And with the MiU A30 video that I did, the device which I borrowed from a friend to do, it made me realize how much I wanted a more modern emulation handheld of my own. And of course, I got the RG35XX-SP. And you know, the Game Boy Advance SP was my favorite handheld for a really long time, so I figured for nostalgia's sake and for the form factor that I do love, I figured we could mess around with this. Handhelds like this that don't have analog do end up getting a little outdated in terms of the consoles that they can emulate, but still, most of the handhelds that I own, including the emulation handheld and the newer official hardware handhelds, most of them are horizontal, so I figured having something a little different again would be refreshing. So let's open this up. As you can see, I did get silver because my Game Boy Advance SP, my original one, was also silver. So you know, let's get hit by that nostalgia train at full speed. So let's open this up. The box itself is pretty nice, pretty clean, pretty cool. I did hear that anbernic does do a good job with their handhelds for the most part. This is where the handheld is at. Over here we do get wipes remove excess dirt, wipe 2 removes excess dirt, wet and dry. Here is the manual and the screen protector, I believe. Is it? Yes, it is. Let's take a look. This is a beefy boy, actually. I might have to bring out my Game Boy Advance SP. Oh, it does come with a little... Okay. So... Definitely this is a lot beefier than the Game Boy Advance SP. I did show you guys on the very first handheld video that I made on this channel that I was holding my original SP, and this one definitely is a lot beefier, but it is very nostalgic of the time when I was smaller and holding the SP in my small hands. It did feel mostly like this. Of course, there's no way to be completely sure, but I do remember it being slightly bigger. That of course, we do have 2 extra buttons here, and we do have 2 extra buttons here. The buttons are, all of them are very clicky. Shoulder buttons too. Everything is very clicky, but you know, it is what it is. We do have a headphone jack here, but it is mono, I think. We do have the volume buttons here. We do have 2 jacks up here. One is of course the USB charger, I believe, and this one is of course mini HDMI. So that you can play it on the TV or a monitor, you know, which is pretty cool. There's the power button, the reset, and that is it. Before we turn it on, let's take a look at the micro SD cards that come here. This is micro SD 2 on the second slot, and as you can see, nothing written on there. It just says 128 gigabytes, nothing else. You can definitely tell this is a very generic, very cheap micro SD, and these aren't very good. This was on the second slot, so I do believe this is mostly just the ROMs, and this isn't very good. This will crap out eventually. It is almost a sure thing that it will crap out, so we want to replace it with a better one, SanDisk or Samsung or any of the well-known good brands. We'll just put this on the computer and check if there's any worthwhile files in here that we want to keep, and so on. Let's take a look at the first micro SD slot. And this one is Casiio. It is not the blue one that I've seen other YouTubers show, but it is Casiio. It is that same brand, and they do say this is a very decent one. I'm not too sure if this is a original Casiio micro SD because all the other ones that I remember seeing were blue, and this one is a very generic matte black card with no paint coat on it, no nothing. So I'm not too sure, but supposedly Casiio micro SDs are fairly solid. We'll trust it for now, but of course we will have to make backups of the files in here onto our computer as well, just in case. And so let's plug those back in and try to turn it on to see the stock OS. I think that is a home button, but anyway. anbernic. It is taking a few seconds. It's blinking twice. Man, I'm getting excited. It reminds me of the day, oh, there you go, it booted up. It reminds me of the day my brother got me the Game Boy Advance SP. Oh, there's sound for the buttons. Okay, so there's the game room, which shows the cards, 1, card 2. So yeah, the card 1 apparently has games as well, which is kind of weird. They do have different games. I just looked at the first few games: Bloons, Bomberman, Castlevania, and then here is Age of Zombies, Disgaea 2, God of War, Chains of Olympus. Some decent games in there. I will definitely have to look through those on my computer. From what I hear, this Game Rooms tab is the outdated slot that was pretty terrible to look at. So the RetroArch tab was added later on. Oh yeah, so it does separate like that. I guess it is better. I mean, in my point of view, it's still kind of not that great. But yeah, there is the App Center. It has music, video, ebook, file manager, expert. I'm not sure what that is. Ebook. I don't know what that is. What's expert? Maybe like document? Like maybe they meant something like professional? I don't know. It is a keyboard, an old, outdated, like a very old looking keyboard. So maybe it's like something to do with professional. I don't know. Maybe like document reading something. I don't know. There's apps, bezels. Yeah, so it's some different settings. Turbo key, reset apps, shaders. You know, all pretty interesting stuff that we should probably look into eventually. But for now, we'll just take a quick look. File manager. Oh, should I not have first? Oh. I'm not. Is it like this is microSD 1 and this is microSD 2? I'm not sure why there's 2. Can we go back? Quit. And one of the reasons I did get this was for the ports. So I will be installing a different firmware on it. I don't want to keep the stock OS. Favorites, of course I have nothing on there. History. There's something on history already, even though I didn't play anything. I don't know. Of course you can look for whatever game or file, and then there's settings, system information, lock screen after 1 minute. At least 5, right? Or 2? 2 minutes, I guess. Backlight brightness level 4, we can change the... I feel like the screen on the camera looks way worse than to the naked eye. Date and time, language settings, RetroArch settings. We do have to set those up later. Network settings, yeah, so it does have internet, it does have Wi-Fi, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, let's try out some games, I guess. I do want to see the ports. These are mostly free. I think is it? I mean, Wolfenstein 3D is on there, and Outrun, I guess. But for the most part, like Cave Story, Dinosaur, stuff like that, we did see the port on the MiU A30 as well, and there the Spruce people had it included as freeware. Cannonball or Outrun was not included because that was a paid game. So yeah, I'm not too sure. Let's try Outrun to see if it works. I couldn't get it to run on the A30, but maybe this will work. I was never good at racing games on Nintendo, on the Super Nintendo and Game Boy Advance, but you know, the port seems to be working pretty well. But of course, it is a very non-demanding I did get a very strong vibration just now. The device did vibrate like crazy just now, and I'm not sure what that was for. There you go. I'm not sure what that vibration is. Did you hear that? I don't... Game over. Okay, so do we go to home button? Yeah, so it does open RetroArch menu with that. What is home? Nope, that is just reset. I just hard reset it. Oops, it is not what I meant to do, but it is what happened. It's like last time, it is taking a while. Yeah, so ports did work pretty well, but you know, it's mostly freeware, nothing too crazy. We do want to put a custom firmware to play ports of some of the computer games that we have, that we actually own on Steam and whatnot. So we'll try that eventually. Let's try some PlayStation 1. Yeah, there is quite a selection of games here. Ridge Racer, we can try Ridge Racer. Yeah, so the clicky button, it's very clicky, it's very loud. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of that. I was trying to see if I could change the camera view, but I guess not. So it actually runs really smoothly. I'm just terrible at racing games, even though I love racing games. And it's pretty hard to play looking through the phone. I don't know. It looks weird. Yeah, so despite how terrible I am, you can see that it runs really well. It's fantastic. Who would have thought we would be able to play PlayStation games on a Game Boy? On a literal Game Boy. I keep looking at the phone screen and then at the normal screen, and then I miss the turns. Anyway, yeah. So that wasn't it either. That just turns off. Ridge Racer. Okay, so tapping that does screenshot apparently. I did not want to do screenshot, but it is what it is. Shaders, resume, restart, main menu, quit. There you go. There you go. So that's how you exit, I guess. I'm sure there is a different shortcut somewhere. We'll have to look into that later, but it is what it is. So I think most of PS1 games will run fine. Let's try. I do know that God of War does lag up a tiny bit. Grand Theft Auto probably doesn't work too well, but let's try something. There's Ridge Racer here too. Let's try that. And I know I say I suck at racing games and then I keep choosing racing games, but like I'm trying to see like if rendering speed keeps up with the high speed of the cars. And I gotta say, on the screen doesn't look too bad yet. So it does feel a little laggy. The sound definitely feels a little, there's a little cutoffs. I don't know if you can hear it. Yep, there was a little stop there. Oops. Yeah, so there is a little freezes here and there. Am I losing control of the car? Oh, there was a weird slowdown. The sound changed. That was awkward. Was that a shortcut that I just passed by? Oh, those stops are real mood killers. Like, I know I'm not racing very smoothly, but when it stops like that, it's definitely a mood killer. So yeah, so PSP definitely not gonna run everything. Most of you probably have seen already videos of other people trying to run God of War on here, and it is fairly laggy. But yeah. Oh, the menu is different here. Exit to menu. Oh, it does go into PPSP. Can we go to games? We'll just exit. But yeah, even if we do put in custom OS, definitely not gonna run things like Grand Theft Auto that much better. Maybe God of War, but like the real heavy ones, it's probably not gonna be able to. We're mostly putting it for the little improvements and for the port master. I guess we could show God of War here as well. I'm sure countless people have already shown this. That start button click is so loud. Oh, yeah, definitely not working without. Yeah, so you do click it once on the PPSPP. You do click it once and it becomes an analog. Click the power button once, and this does become an analog, but you can definitely hear that it's not running at full speed. If you muted it, I'd say the graphically it's playable, but then the sound definitely is a bummer. That breaking sound is definitely a bummer. But you know, it is what it is. Just definitely frame rate drop, even on gameplay wise. Yeah, especially when he does the big swings, it does slow down quite a bit. Probably not what you want to get this device for, but still pretty cool that we are able to play this on a Game Boy Advance SP looking device. It is pretty cool to see at the very least. After playing those few games, it is getting really warm, like right where the plastic goes in like that. So like right at the D-pad, not on the D-pad, but like the plastic underneath it. That is heating up. Not too crazy much, but definitely you can feel it, you know. there is N64 here. Man, I don't play most of these. I guess Wave Race. I don't care.
Welcome to Dolphin Park. Warm-up time. Follow that dolphin.
Yeah, so did that work? Yeah, so you can't move until you do click that. So it does have that same function as on the PSP. But you can definitely tell that there is a frame rate drop here. Yeah, not very fun. So this device would probably be mostly for PlayStation 1. For everything up to PlayStation 1. I think PlayStation 1 games run pretty well. So, you know, if you want to play JRPGs. So this would most likely be a portable PS1 machine for me. But you know, we could try some JRPGs from PSP era. There are no JRPGs on the N64, but I think something like Mario Kart would run pretty decently. I don't know why they don't have it in the list here. Oh, I guess they didn't have any Mario stuff, which, you know, could make sense. But they do have DS as well, which is interesting. We will have to put in our own games later to try Need for Speed Underground 2 for the DS. Yeah, so the L2 does change. L2 and R2 does change the screens a little. Nerd. Wait, what cars do we have? Volkswagen. Oh, Golf GTI. Corolla, Eclipse. Lexus. Mazda. Car is locked, so we do have to. Yeah, so between Golf GTI, Nissan 24. I'll go with Golf. Look at that, so much better in everything. Confirm purchase. Let's go with Golf. Oh, this is rough looking. The inputs, I don't. There is a delay on the input for some reason. If I hold too much, it goes too much. If I hold just for like a tiny bit longer, it goes too much. But if I don't, then it doesn't go. I don't know. Yeah, not a huge fan of the controls here. That wasn't very great. But yeah, I mean, DS works pretty well with this. Definitely event failed. Drastic. But I assume everything else runs quite well. Those were the stuff that I was mostly worried about. But I guess Dreamcast would also be pretty tough to play. There is Soul Calibur. Crazy Taxi. Yeah, I'm sure all the weaker stuff you can run. WonderSwan. What games do they have for WonderSwan? These are all super cool. Hey, that's Korean. I do like WonderSwan quite a bit. Very cool, very cool. Such a cool handheld. Wait, what? Why does it have a Final Fantasy X image on there? Or this is definitely just the first Final Fantasy. Well, we know that it will run most everything up to Game Boy Advance and PS1. I think, we didn't try much on PS1, but for the most part, I guess we could try Soul Calibur. Those 3D fighting games were always difficult to emulate back then, so it would be interesting to see. Yeah, just from the sound, you can already tell it's not gonna be a fun time. Actually, that's not so bad. Actually, this wasn't so bad. This is actually pretty good. I guess we'll have to see something that renders more stuff than just a fighting stage, I guess. But Soul Calibur definitely. Let's try to run Crazy Taxi. I just didn't want to do God of War for the PSP, Crazy Taxi for the Dreamcast, and stuff like that are always shown in every single video. So I didn't really want to do that, but we don't get a lot of alternatives in the micro SD card that they have provided us. So we'll go with it. Dreamcast is something that I didn't grow up with actually here in Brazil, so I don't even know what good games there are. Oh, this isn't so bad. Yeah, so I think Dreamcast, everything runs pretty well. Yeah, the rumble is a little bit crazy on this. How do I reverse? Oh, Oh, okay. I'm 90% certain this music is copyrighted, so I will have to mute this. Yeah, so at least those two games that we tried. Dreamcast actually runs really well. Didn't see any issue with that. So PS1, Dreamcast does pretty well. Nintendo 64 didn't do that well, but it might have been that one game. We will have to install stuff like Diddy Kong Racing, Mario Kart probably will run without any issue, and you won't need like an analog and a D-pad for it. So games like that will probably run pretty well on the Nintendo 64. We will have to look into some PSP games that would work, and that on the stock OS if you want to keep it this way. But of course, we don't want to keep it on stock OS. So, let's take it to the computer, let's make some backups of this stuff, check what ROMs they have there, and of course, try to install the custom firmware and check if anything improves and so on.
2,000 years later.
Okay, so the footage up until this point has been of several days ago. In that meantime, I did put MuOS on this, and I did play around quite a bit with different things just to have an idea of what I wanted from this device. Now, like I mentioned before, of emulation handhelds that were actually mine were still just these two, right? Which are very old. You can check out the videos if you want, but they're really old handhelds that can't handle things like PlayStation and above. This one, once we put the custom OS on it, we were able to start PlayStation stuff, but we did have to use Framescape and whatnot to be able to play, and it wasn't always a good experience. So yeah, those were very limited. Now that I have a more modern emulation handheld, I did think about what I wanted to put on this, and all the stuff that I showed so far, they were cool and all, but in this few days that I did play with this quite a bit, I did know that anything that uses any kind of analog on this, it just doesn't feel good. I know a lot of YouTubers do say that once you switch it to this, that it is doable and whatnot, but personal experience, it does not feel good. I don't enjoy it. PSP, I don't enjoy it here mostly because of the screen, but Nintendo 64, I don't like it because I am missing controls here. I think it would have been good to have at least one analog here. PlayStation was mostly okay, because most of the games don't use analogs, so that is one of the consoles that I do keep on this device. Initially, I thought of showing you all the same games that I showed so far, but on the MuOS now, so that we can see the performance difference between stock OS and MuOS, but honestly, that felt kind of boring, and some of the stuff that I showed on the stock OS, honestly, I'm probably not gonna play on this device, so I felt that was a little contradictory. So if you go to content, you can see here, I do have Game Boy Advance. Obviously, this is the Game Boy Advance factor, so Game Boy Advance I do think has it on this, but you know, performance-wise, it's not gonna change between stock OS and MuOS. Game Boy Color, you will have to have some overlays and whatnot, but still I do think is fantastic in this form factor as well. And again, you won't see any performance difference because these are all easy to emulate stuff, right? I do have Super Nintendo here, but I don't have a lot of games of Super Nintendo here. Just the stuff that I wanted to test out a little bit, that I did test out on other devices and whatnot. I do have ports in here. That's one of the reasons I did put MuOS on this, because I wanted to try out ports, and that is one of the big positives of this device. I do like that quite a bit. And of course, like I mentioned, PlayStation 1. I do have a ton of PlayStation 1 games on here. Most of it does run quite well, pretty fine. I do like that quite a bit. This has been mostly a Game Boy Advance and PlayStation 1 portable for me personally, but anything up to and including PlayStation 1, none of those had analog, so all that runs really great here. I do like it, and I didn't put any Game Gear and like other handhelds in here, but they also run great. I could definitely put it in here later if I wanted to, but yeah, anything up to and including PlayStation 1 I think is a really good experience on this handheld, but anything after that, it starts requiring analogs, and so I'm not a huge fan of that here. At least for me personally, I didn't enjoy having to change it here, and even then not having enough buttons to go around with most of the games. But let's try some of the Game Boy Advance games just to show you the default overlay that they put in here. There were so many amazing games for the Game Boy Advance, especially RPGs, which is my favorite genre. But yeah, let's try Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. I haven't booted on this yet, and I do know that the beginning intro part did used to have a lot of issues with older handhelds like this. So let's try with this here and see how it handles. And you can see the overlay here does say Game Boy SP, just like the actual Game Boy Advance. It's such a great soundtrack. I do love this. It brings back so much memories. I do love this quite a bit. Let's see that big intro. It plays quite well. Which is not surprising, obviously, because this device is definitely a whole lot stronger than these. But you do see some frame rate drops, I think. At least I thought so. But yeah, back then, this was pushing Game Boy Advance to its limits. But yeah, fantastic game. I remember even the early PSP, the early GBA emulator for the PSP had issues with this. Of course, it was quickly patched, and it was one of the only ways to play on a handheld way back then, but you know, fantastic. That wasn't a Game Boy Advance, obviously, but you know, fantastic stuff. And just the art style of games in Game Boy Advance were just always top notch. As far as 2D art goes on handheld, I think Game Boy Advance was definitely a huge jump from the handhelds up to that point, to the point where playing games from Game Boy Advance, even now, they don't feel very dated. Yeah, so you can see that the buttons do click really loudly, which is one thing that can be an issue maybe. So you can see it runs completely fine, fantastic. I mean, like I said, Game Boy Advance is not that difficult to emulate, of course. What I mean is it looks fantastic, it sounds fantastic, and it feels great to be playing on this form factor. I just love it. It is definitely really great. Yep, great. Just going back, MuOS does add this UI, which is pretty neat. You know, explore content, favorites, history, applications, information, configuration, and all that. Configuration, you can change your theme here. You can download custom themes as well if you so desire. You change the color, the brightness. There is an HDMI output over here, which we can try later and see how well that goes. Dingo's Commander, there is Moonlight here, Portmaster. There's a bunch of stuff that you can look into. I don't much care about most of that, to be honest. Game Boy Color, we can just try some Game Boy Color. You can see that it does also have the UI that resembles the... Actually, it's from the original Game Boy, I think. The lens of that. But you know, it is what it is. Pinball games are one of my favorite games to play on Game Boy form factor. I do like it quite a bit. Oops. Just the controls for every pinball game, it's slightly different. Even though it's just two paddles. Yeah, not that good. I'm not that great at games like this, but I do love pinball games. Just, I don't know, it brings back a sort of nostalgia, you know? But yeah, so those two, fantastic. Feels amazing to play in this device. I do like it quite a bit. There is Super Nintendo as well. We can just show that games that have the super effects, they do work completely well without any issues. Is this focusing actually? Have I been playing unfocused this whole time? So yeah, I have these games that require super effects on Super Nintendo just to test it out, but like any JRPG for Super Nintendo on a handheld feels fantastic to play. I do like that quite a bit. But yeah, you can see that it does play perfectly fine. I'm just total trash at this game. Just wanted to show that all the special chip games, they do work fine here. And PlayStation 1. So yeah, we have Breath of Fire 3 here, which is one of my favorite JRPGs. The art here is probably not as good as Breath of Fire 4, but I do like 3 quite a bit. Yeah, to be honest, I don't even know you why I'm showing you JRPGs, because, you know, JRPGs will work great on most things. JRPGs aren't the toughest games to emulate. But you can see it's running perfectly. All the effects, everything, no problem there. So it runs super smooth, as you can see. No issue, no problem. So yeah, maybe we'll show you something a little more demanding, just because, you know, JRPGs, again, not that crazy. Now the PS version of the Harry Potter games, fantastic looking game. You can see there's no issue with the audio either. But yeah, the PS1 version of this game is the least demanding, so, you know, there's that. But I still think it looks pretty good for a PS1 game. Yeah, so Dumbledore looked terrible on this version, but, you know, it is what it is.
Welcome to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I am Albus Dumbledore, your headmaster. Now, Hogwarts is full of secrets, Harry, so search behind every door. Keep in mind, not all secrets are rewarding. Oh, nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak. 4 wonderful words, don't you think?
Whatever you say. Whatever you say, Dumbledore. But you can tell that it's runs really great. And again, not a great example either, I guess. This is not that demanding of a game, I guess, as well. But, you know, it is a fully 3D game running very smoothly without any issues.
By the look of that scar, you must be Harry Potter. I'm Fred. Hello there, Harry. And behind
any special portrait, but of course not. If you bring us earwax every flavour beans, we'll tell you the password. We'll be in the Gryffindor common room, which is through the portrait of the fat lady. See you around, Harry. Hey, Harry! Remember me? Ron Weasley? That slimy Slytherin Draco Malfoy? I think it was your old Hedwig. Come on, Harry. Well, well, well. If it isn't the famous Harry Potter. I'm Draco Malfoy, and you do well to show me respect. Looking for that owl of yours? How careless of you to leave it lying about. Go home to your mother, Potter. Oh, sorry. You don't have one, do you?
Damn.
To climb up, just push forwards on your control.
On my controller? Just press forward on my controller.
Let's go.
Fourth wall breaking Ron Weasley.
Follow me. To jump, just approach the edge and keep pressing forwards on the controller.
On the controller. But yeah, again, works pretty great. Well, there's some fantastic games here, but for the most part, they do work pretty great. There will be a few that won't work great, but you know, there's always one or two in every emulator that doesn't work too well. But even on Nintendo 64, things like Mario Kart do works okay. It's not everything that doesn't feel great without the analog. There are a few games that you don't need the analog, so those could work great, but I just wasn't too interested in those. You can also put the DS emulator in here and play some of the DS games that don't require the touchpad. Again, like Mario Kart DS and Super Mario 64 DS. Those do work fine on this kind of form factor even without the touchpad. So yeah, it's all up to you really. It's just that for me personally, these are what I think are great. But just looking at those, you know, it's not too much difference from these, right? Only the PlayStation 1 that runs really well on here will be its advantage over those older emulation handhelds that I have here. So really, is it worth it? And I do think so, because through the port master you can install a bunch of PC ports on this device and a lot of them do work great. I haven't been able to get everything to boot, but there is a lot of options there. As long as you own the game on Steam or GOG or Epic even, as long as you have a bunch of games there that are on the list on port master, then you can get this to play. You do have to install the game you own on your computer and then grab the files from there to transfer to a specific folder here. But yeah, for the most part, they do work fantastically. And yeah, as you can see, we have Balatro here, which works great, but this screen is still a little too small for me, at least, to play Balatro, but I still have quite a bit of fun with it. Things like Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 even, they do work okay on here. It's just that without a mouse, you having to move the mouse cursor with the D-pad can get a little frustrating because you won't move the cursor too smoothly. So to pick up specific items on the ground, to select specific options, it can test your patience quite a bit. So on a device that doesn't have an analog, probably not a good idea to play ports of games that do require you to move around with a cursor. That said, I do have Grand Theft Auto 3 here, and the reason I did install this here instead of the other Grand Theft Autos is that, yes, there is a cursor here too, but like the other Grand Theft Autos, you do need two analogs to play it very well. Here you don't have any analogs, but I do think GTA 3 works somewhat, because GTA 3 you could change the view to the overview camera, right? As if you would be playing GTA 1 and 2, which of course didn't have any analogs on that. Let's just skip the dialogues to show you. Now you could see that I couldn't change the camera, but if you go here, there, you can change the camera to the overhead view like GTA 1 and 2. And then you could play it as if it was GTA 1 and 2, making you not require a second analog. It's not the best experience, but if you really want to get a GTA fix, then this is a way that you can play on this device without needing the second analog. Not a huge fan of this, but just thought I would show you. But there are a lot of nifty PC games that you can play on this device through Portmaster like this. Some of all-time favorites are, of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which looks fantastic and plays fantastic here, but also Stardew Valley. Or was it playing unfocused this whole time? But yeah, as you can see, it is fantastic. The controls aren't too bad. It is fairly intuitive if you just press around to figure it out. It's not too bad. Even with just these buttons, it's fantastic. And yeah, it works great. It plays great. Very fun to play this in bed and whatnot, having Stardew Valley at the palm of your hands in a small device like this. It's like a Game Boy Advance that plays Stardew Valley. Fantastic, If you have had your fill of Harvest Moon for the Super Nintendo and Game Boy Advance and whatnot, then, why not? As long as you own Stardew Valley on Steam, you can play this on here without any issues. Fantastic. I do like that quite a bit. So yeah, I do think the main things that I play on this is Game Boy Advance, PlayStation 1, and the ports. I do think that's what makes it. The ports is definitely what makes it different to the other handhelds that I have, is what sets it apart and what I do end up playing mostly on it. Like I said, on the computer, I do tend to gravitate towards heavier games. I do have a lot of indie games and 2D games on my Steam account that I haven't been playing much, but now putting them here, I can just play it here and it's been fantastic. Things like Gravity Circuit, fantastic. Owlboy and Raccoon, I haven't been able to make it work on this device. I'm not sure if it's like a compatibility issue with this device. If anyone has gotten it to work, if you could get back to me on how you did it, that would be fantastic. Because I do want to play Owlboy. It is one of my favorite games. But yeah, there's things like Space Cadet Pinball. There's also a bunch of original games at Portmaster, things that you don't require the install files that are ready to play. If you want to try those. Strikey Sisters also, I couldn't really get it to work, but a lot of the ones that I did get to work, like this Titan Tactics, is one of the games that are ready to play, that you don't need the install files. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff here. If you want, I can make a separate video about my favorite Portmaster games on this device that I have been playing. Of course, I haven't played all of them, but I could talk about some of the ones that I did. So yeah, that's what I had to say about this handheld. It has been out for a little while now, and it is an XX, so the performance of the XX isn't anything new, but I do think it's still worth it in 2025. And just the fact that it is a clamshell, I do think that works really well for a handheld. We did show the MiU Flip not too long ago, and yeah, the MiU Flip has the analogs, which can make it better to play the consoles that I mentioned that do require analogs and more controls than just this. But there aren't that many options of Linux-based handhelds that are clamshell that work this well. Either this or that one, fun is guaranteed. It's mostly a matter of taste. For me, I have been enjoying the 35XX-SP quite a bit. This is my very first modern anbernic device. I gotta say, I am pretty surprised with it. Feels great, the hinges are great, controls feel great. Just the clickiness of the buttons are slightly too loud. I do know that people have been opening it and putting stuff underneath the buttons to make it less clicky, but honestly, you know, I don't think it's that terrible. Today, I do think Anbernic's XX series are a great entry point. It's not too complicated to mess around with, definitely a lot better than the older stuff, a lot more flexible and, you know, a lot more powerful. So I do think these are great starting points for anyone wanting to get into the hobby, but also they're strong enough that even if you are not someone starting out in the hobby, if you just want a device that does play these older consoles well, you can't go wrong with, well, any of the XX devices. And yeah, that is all I had to say and show. If you want me to show more gameplay of specific consoles on this or more ports, then let me know in the comments down below. I will see what I can do. But yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, consider helping the channel out by clicking join down below to become a member, subscribe to see more videos like this, and of course, always nerd on.